All right, we're live. What's up, Paul?
Not much, Uriah. What's going on?
Hey, man, I'm living the dream, brother. I'm living the dream over here. I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me, spending some time here on YouTube with everybody. Hope everybody out there is having a good what is it, Thursday already? Almost to the weekend. So we're working our way there. That's awesome. What I wanted to do is just talk politics with you, man. It's been a big week. We've had State of the Union, which went by any polling indications, and like people think it was really well done. I think many people are saying Trump knocked it out of the park by using the topics that he did and the way he delivered the speech. Of course, we had our governor, our Virginia leader, Abigail Spanberger, out there with the response, and that's getting some headlines and some other things. So yeah, man, I just appreciate you coming on and talking to me about it.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So first, I mean, so how do you think the State of the Union went? We had some Democrats who didn't go, who decided they were going to sit this one out. I saw some crazy video of a gathering. Some Democrats gathered nearby the Capitol, and they had some, I think, frogs from Oregon on the screen. That was kind of interesting to see that. Interesting choice. But people in the chamber there, I think the president got a lot of applause for the topics that he picked.
It's funny. They're the ones that try to call Republicans weird. And if you saw some of that frog stuff, it was off the charts. We couldn't, if you're a Republican, you couldn't be happier seeing them kind of fumble all over themselves. By the way, they are the ones that invited the president to give a State of the Union address, and so they're boycotting their own State of the Union invitation, and they just looked terrible. And I thought the president, and let me just to set the record straight, I love Trump's policies, and I mean a lot of them, and I'm not gonna hide from that. But his personality, like a lot of people, I think can be irritating. He says this, he can be. I don't like it when he speaks often, but I thought this time, and I watched it, I thought he did a good job. He didn't repeat himself too much like he usually does. He hit all of the accomplishments, and these are serious accomplishments. And he really put them on the spot, and just really drew the contrast between the Democrats and the Republicans. And that's what needs to be done. And I think people were watching, and that's been getting picked up, because you can think the guy's a weirdo or whatever you want to think about him, but his policies are what are going to change our lives, for the better or for the worse. And I just really think he brought that home. So I gave him.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. He picked these 80-20 issues, right? I mean, when you look at the issues that he talked about, protecting, American citizens from outsiders, right? That polls really, I mean, that's a high polling thing where most people think that U.S. citizens should get preferential treatment and protection from the federal government over illegal immigrants. He talked about voter ID. He talked about all these issues that really poll well. And it seems like he knew that going in, because he kept criticizing the Democrats for not standing and applauding, and so yeah. So he knew that these issues that he were going to talk about would get the Republicans to stand up and applaud, but he knew kind of the Democrats wouldn't do that, and now they want to put all of that video into every single campaign ad for the midterms that haven't even started yet.
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old, and that's a trick that I would use with her, where he saw them doing that. They were playing into his hand, and then he finally said, "But I'm gonna give you an issue, and if you are against it, sit in your seat." And he basically invited them to stand on an issue that everyone in America probably agrees on, that American citizens should be given the most important thing for a president and Congress to do is protect American citizens over an illegal alien. And that's definitely a 90-10 issue. If you had to pick what the priority is, and they just sat there. They couldn't bring themselves, because they hate him so much, they just couldn't bring themselves to cooperate, or they felt like they were falling into a trap. And they did fall in the trap by not standing and agreeing on that topic, and so many others.
He talked a lot about the border. He talked about the border. He talked about crime, and he talked about these sort of issues. He talked about the economy. these are the kitchen table issues that many politicians say they need to run on all the time. And then when Abigail Spanberger had the rebuttal later that evening, she stood up and said, the president lied. The economy is not doing that great. Their ICE is going out and targeting U.S. citizens. They're shooting and killing U.S. citizens in the streets. The ICE agents aren't trained. She really pictured this dystopian view of what's going on, talked about inflation and how that's crept up. But if you take a look, especially on the inflation and the economy, all of that, I mean, food prices started going up in 2022. Interest rates, credit card payments, that the stuff that really hits families hard, that also started going up right after COVID in 2021, 2022. So for her to come out and say that is all of this is under Trump, and over the past year, all this is going in the wrong direction, that's kind of disingenuous, wouldn't you say?
Oh, she absolutely. And you know her, and I've met her many times, and I've seen her. She was nervous. She did not do well. That was not the best Spanberger we've ever seen. You'll notice when she'll start to rock a little bit when she gets in a groove, and she started to do that. It's a cool thing that she does, and people like it. That people that like her, but she just couldn't get comfortable. And she came right. The first thing she did is he said he lied, said that he was promising all these things but not giving any ideas, but that the Democrats were the ones that were working to keep things affordable and keep them safe. And that's just not true. The president spoke for an hour and 48 minutes and gave you dozens of things, ideas that he has implemented and he's continuing to implement or is going to implement to try to make you safe and make things affordable. It was on its face false what she said. And then she turned around and promised affordability, but didn't have, she didn't give us any ideas. There were no policy positions in her short speech. That was not good, Spanberger. And if they're prepping her to be a presidential candidate, that is not a good first step into the market.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time that she's sort of had a national platform to follow the president here, and we've seen other politicians here in Virginia who have got a similar platform to do the State of the Union response. We saw Elizabeth Guzman years ago. She did. Bob McDonnell, I think, had the opportunity back when he was governor to respond to I believe it was Obama who was the president at the time.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. But you said that there's no policy positions that she put forward, but yet she is getting raked over the coals for these 50 tax increases that were proposed. Now, they didn't pass in the General Assembly. We're talking about Richmond right now, where you served as a delegate in the House of Delegates in Richmond. So what got news back in January, when guys like me started reporting on this stuff, are the 50 tax increases that they were going to impose. They could have imposed. So stuff like taxes on dog walking, haircuts, DoorDash, all these normal everyday stuff. And when it didn't go forward, the Democrats in Richmond held a press conference and said, "Fooled you. We weren't going to do it anyway. So you guys are making such a big deal out of it. That didn't age well." And I think Don Scott, who's the speaker down there, said something akin to that. And my thought is like, well, first of all, when you come out and you introduce these bills, we're going to talk about them, right? In the press, we're going to cover this stuff because we know that it's obviously of interest to our audience, but it's going to get people talking. So we're going to talk about it. And when you introduce these bills, and you can talk on this better than I, but it's a whole process, right? I mean, you have to write the bill, you have constituents to think about, you have input to get, then especially if it involves any money, you've got to put these bills through the budget office to have them reviewed, to look at feasibility and the impact on the budget, about how much something would cost or how much something could bring in to the state's coffers. And so the fact remains is like, well, okay, fine, you didn't put these taxes in place, but you talked about it, and you wrote a bill and you submitted it for review, or paid government workers reviewed it, and then to turn around and say, "Fooled you, we were going to do it anyway, so why are you talking about it?" That's kind of disingenuous.
Oh, well, to me, it's a a smoke and mirrors thing is happening right now. We are talking about the things that didn't pass, but what we should be talking about are the things that are going to pass that she promised she would support and that are moving their way through. So backing up a little bit, they presented her years ago before she ran for when she ran for Congress as a moderate, and then when she got there, they always wanted her to show her to be a moderate. She's not that is not her voting record. Her voting record is not a moderate voting record. That's just not true. And so but that the media carries that line, and that helps her get elected. That gets a lot of those swing voters, and they believe she's moderate. I hear it all the time when it comes up in conversation with constituents and former constituents. So our expectations were wrong because we were told she was moderate. So she's doing what a Democrat would do. But the big stuff, this paid family medical leave, and they increased the minimum wage to $15. I mean, around here, Northern Virginia, no one's making $15. You can't pick a guy up if you were still trying to in front of 7-Eleven or Home Depot for less than $21 an hour. These are people who are illegal that will not work for less than $21 an hour. So what you're doing is you're hurting the people out in the Midwest where $15 is actually, you can live on that. Or farm work, people that are running farms, people that are not getting rich, they're running farms. How many rich small farmers do you know? Or this paid medical leave. I run a business with 12 employees and about 20 contractors, this is that, and I don't know if they're going to combine the paid sick leave with the family leave, but we're looking at about a 22% increase in the cost of labor. And I mean, we've been struggling. We've been having our pay scale has gone up from the low, for entry and low 20s up to starting around 24, 25 in just a few years. And that's happening everywhere in the Northern Virginia markets and probably other places too. So the idea that she ran on affordability and she is getting ready to sign into law these things that are going to that they're not a lot of states are doing. They're super expensive, and they're not going to make things more affordable. It actually makes them more expensive. And another one I have to mention is she's going to allow government workers to collectively bargain. In other words, unionized Prince William County and Stafford County employees. And Stafford County is facing massive increases in taxes, 38%, 39% in 4 years, proposed 6% more, plus a B-poll tax on the gross receipts of businesses. And now you're going to let them unionize? We already know every time, without exception, I mean every time, that means the cost of doing business for the government goes up even more. These are horrible ideas that will put us in the same league as Oregon and California, and I just can't believe that's what's getting ready to happen in Virginia. And she's already promised to sign those bills into law. They're just fine tuning them, and I think it's a disaster.
One of the things that really took me by surprise was Robert Lateef. He is the chair of the Prince William County School Board, and he criticized this whole collective bargaining thing. WJLA picked it up, Nick Minnock, and did a story about it. And it's very rare to see a Democrat, which Lateef is, criticize his party or their policy positions, and here he has. Now, I don't think so. It's fair to say that he hasn't stopped collective bargaining in Prince William County. They put forward an agreement. They were, I think, the largest. Prince William became the largest jurisdiction in Virginia to have an agreement, a bargaining agreement with its teachers and its union. But nonetheless, to hear Lateef come out and criticize that rose, I think that raised eyebrows. And so I think you're right. You talk about what's going to go forward. Not to mention increased costs on electricity, right? We keep seeing costs on power, energy. They continue to go up. We continue to see these data centers come in here and tap into the infrastructure to power what it is what they need to power the internet, essentially. And maybe we'll get into that here in a second, because I know Louise Lucas and their Senate budget, they talked about doing away with data center incentives and tax incentives for them. So we'll see what happens there. But while we're still talking about Spanberger, I want to show this here. I will see if I can bring this on the screen. Let's see if I can. There we go. All right. So Spanberger, who did her response to Trump in Williamsburg the next morning, came to Manassas, and she was in the city schools. Looks like this is from the Facebook page. Manassas City Public Schools says, as part of Jumpstart's Read for the Record Week, the world's largest reading experience, our kindergartners are enjoying a special treat as the mayor and the governor here are reading to children. And I thought that was really neat. It was really neat to see the governor come to Manassas, read to the kids with the mayor. That's all nice and good. We love to see that. But what really stood out to me was every morning I get an email from the governor's office as that details her activities for the day, and right there, plain as day, yeah, the governor's going to be in Manassas today talking to kids, but no press. Sorry, no questions, because this right here, obviously a tough crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll tell you, I've covered governors at schools many times. Youngkin came to, I can't tell you how many times Youngkin came up here to school. I covered him at Colonial Forge in Stafford County. I covered him at elementary schools in Prince William County. And I sent an email out to both the governor's office this morning and the school division in Manassas saying, hey, listen, why no cameras? Why no press? I mean, this looks like a very fun, good news type of story. Why wouldn't you let reporters come in? And I have not heard anything from either organization, the governor's office or the schools. But what do you make of this, man? These are, I mean, it just seems to me like this is an easy win, an easy photo op.
Oh, they don't want any questions from you, because you're not going to ask them questions about kids reading. You're going to ask them questions about making the cost of running schools more expensive, and which means the cost, the property tax is going to go up in those jurisdictions. That's exactly what. I'm not speculating. That's what always happens, and that's what she's getting ready to do. I'll be happy and surprised and grateful if she doesn't sign the things I just mentioned into law. But the worst thing that Virginia could be facing is a Democratic governor who is poised to run in a Democratic nomination to be president. She has got to be more liberal than the Bernie Sanders and the Pocahontases of the world, and that is going to devastate us. And whatever damage she does, it'll take us years, if we're lucky, to undo it. If we can undo it, the Republicans would have to get the majorities back and the governorship to undo these changes in law that they're getting rid of the bans we have, or instituting more expensive policies. Yeah, she doesn't want to answer questions, Uriah. She wants to run for president. And teachers and her teachers unions and the unions, all their money, and I mean all, like 95% goes to Democrats now. It used to be a little more, not even close. It was never equal, but now it's just almost all, 90-something% of all of their union dues that go to politics go to Democrats. So what that is, those are extensions of the Democratic fundraising apparatus now.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of talk about ICE on both sides of the State of the Union. Trump talked about the securing the border. Spanberger talked about untrained ICE officers going out in the communities. And so I pull up this article here from Virginia Mercury. Virginia Democrats sharpen focus on ICE limits after Spanberger's State of the Union rebuttal. Virginia Democrats were already advancing legislation to curb state cooperation with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement when President Donald Trump took the podium Tuesday night to tout record deportations and declare the border secure. But a State of the Union address, Democratic Governor Abigail Spanberger pointed a rebuttal, have now cast those state-level efforts in sharper relief. In her nationally televised response, Spanberger accused President of sending quote unquote poorly trained federal agents into communities without a warrant, and argued that immigration enforcement must not come at the expense of constitutional rights or public trust. By Wednesday morning, Democratic legislators doubled down on the governor's message, highlighting a package of proposals moving through the General Assembly that they said would rein in ICE's role in Virginia and refocus law enforcement on community policing. Marcus Schmidt right there with the Virginia Mercury and his reporting. Let's not forget that ICE under Governor Youngkin, ICE was in this state pretty heavily, especially in the northern part of the state in Northern Virginia, carrying out operations, raids, deportations, arrests, whatever you want to call it. Virginia was in the spotlight there for a minute under former Governor Youngkin, and the first thing Spanberger did when she came in was sign that executive order that said no more cooperation with ICE. Local police need to focus on their communities and not work with federal agents. And so kind of what happened there? How did Virginia go from being in the spotlight and being noted for, this? I think we had a massive arrest operation in Manassas that was announced, or at least it was announced in Manassas anyway, at their FBI headquarters. But how did we go from being in the spotlight to not working with them at all?
Well, first of all, this is one of those examples of where they painted her as a moderate, but this was a campaign promise. Like you said, it was the very first thing she did. Her first executive order was to not cooperate at the state police level and to not mandate that localities do it. I think localities can do it. I don't think she mandated that they don't do it. I could have that wrong, but I think that's what happened. Well, I mean, it just happened because she's a Democrat, and elections have consequences, and she's running for the Republican nomination. And if there's one thing the Democrats all agree on, and they resist efforts, is that there's no room for any kind of enforcement of our immigration law. I'm of the belief that these targeted operations were targeting criminal aliens. And I don't mean criminal because they crossed the border, but criminal because they committed further offenses once they got here. And I'm all for sending those people home. The idea that they're grabbing people that are otherwise innocent, if you take away the fact that they're here without papers, I just haven't seen the mass evidence of that. As a matter of fact, when it does happen, I think they run with it. So I think we're being lied to by the press, most of it, and I think that our crime rate is going to go up, and you're going to see it go back up as a result in the places where we're not working with ICE. So don't forget, we know what it looks like under the Trump administration. If we don't cooperate, he sends them in anyway. Now he might wait till after the congressional race. I think that's what you see. You see him kind of calming down a little bit because he doesn't want to lose this next round of elections. But he will go into these places that aren't cooperating. DC was in a great example. Like, no aliens don't want to be in DC working because they're so sure that it's just not too high risk because DC won't cooperate. All you got to do is let them check out criminal aliens to see if they make the cut to be able to stay in the country or be processed out.
So you think that the president will put the brakes on going into, I guess, more communities or newer communities where we haven't seen them before, such as in Virginia, or now, obviously Minnesota, where they are in heavily. We've seen them in Portland and Oregon. So you think they'll put the brakes on that until after the midterms? I think
that's what I was taking away from Minnesota and Tom Holman going up there, is that he was looking for a way to disengage a little bit. They're still there, but to kind of take the spotlight off, to give another talking point on the Republican side of things, to come out of the press, maybe give a victory to the Democrats in that area. Yeah, he can be pragmatic. I think this would be a bad time to have more people getting killed, whether they got killed because they were interfering with legal police activities or not. It doesn't play well, and you lose votes. And he needs 2 more years of congressional of the House of both the House of Representatives and the United States Senate to continue his policies. So that's the more important goal. So, yeah.
Yeah, then it comes right down to politics then, because that was a lot of the questions is like, hey, when we see this, when we see these, we see some targeted arrests. I mean, those are still going on. We still see those covered and reported in Virginia, but nothing like what we saw under Youngkin when Trump took office. And Youngkin, for a while there, it seemed that he was no fan of President Trump, but then during his last year in office, Youngkin seemed to do more with the president. And so we'll be interesting to see how that relationship changed and what it did for him, for better or for worse over his tenure, whether he was with Trump or not. But
whatever comes next.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think he's going to do next? I mean, I see him coming up and running for Senate.
No, he said he wasn't going to run for Senate. I asked him
You don't see
point
that
blank,
happening?
just me and him, and he didn't seem interested in that. You know, can you imagine this guy's an executive, half a billionaire, I think, something like that. He doesn't want to be one of 100. I think that the most likely thing is either if he can't get a good shot at vice president or president or maybe a cabinet level appointment, he'll run for Virginia governor again. And I would, you know, that's what I think. He's too good. He got a bad rap, not just from Democrats, but even some Republicans for not being conservative enough. Sometimes those Republicans are just. I love them. They supported me. I'm Republican enough for them. I'm telling you, Youngkin's as good as Virginia is ever going to get, and he is a true Christian conservative. And I miss him, and we're going to miss him. If we can get him back, that would be great. But maybe he does something bigger. If Rubio and the vice president don't steal the show.
Yeah. No, we'll do a whole hour on Youngkin and his legacy and what it means for Virginia and where it has interesting left the party and left voters and what have you. What we're still obviously we're talking about Abigail Spanberger because it just seems like every time I post a video about Abigail Spanberger, it does very well. So we'll continue talking about Abigail Spanberger. But here I want to call your attention to this, and if I share this out here. We've got this video where the Loudoun County Republican Committee has put out these videos. They're AI generated, but they have a dead ringer for Abigail Spanberger going around. Okay. And they're doing the gas-powered gas blowers and the gun confiscations. And like this has sparked so much controversy on so many levels because
oh my god,
I mean, have you seen these? I mean,
I love it. We should play it more often.
So I mean, so this I'm telling you, this is getting a lot of play. So
Lord.
Yeah, and they've done two of these. So these are going to become a thing as AI gets better and more believable. So Scott Pio is at the Loudoun County Republican Committee, and he's been in the press because he's been criticizing the Virginia or the RPV Republican Committee of Virginia for what he says is a lack of leadership. And so he's putting his stuff out there. I saw that they were celebrating because James Woods, the actor, conservative personality on X, retweeted this and gave them a bunch of views on this. But I don't know. You've been in the arena. You've done campaigning. AI continues to improve every single day. Are we going to see more stuff like this? What do you make of this?
Well, yes, we will, unless there's a law passed against it. And the only thing that's close is laws against child pornography, and revenge porn and revenge generated stuff. But so yeah, I think it's legal, and seeing that, of course, I think those are all true statements they're implying there. She's just not, I guess she wasn't available to actually stand in on that video, so they needed to use AI.
She may have had some actors fees or something else as well if she participated, then it could have cost more money than I don't know. It's very interesting. And then you have the people who are saying, hey, this needs to be banned immediately. We can't have this. This does not make our favorite candidate look very good. However, we've seen similar videos about Donald Trump all the time who make him out to be a crying baby or a fat slob or shoving a Big Mac in his face all the time,
or worse.
Or worse, right? Or we've seen some severed heads and some bloody what have you over the years. We've seen it all about Donald Trump, but yet very few want to shut that down and say, oh no, you can't do that, we don't like you're picking on our guy.
Yeah, and I can't. Again, there was some legislation. Now it's coming. Privileges and Elections on the committee, on one of the committees on which I sat, did have legislation about AI generated political ads, and so I am curious what became of that. I don't know. It didn't die at our level, and we had 2,000 bills of which we acted. I can't remember what happened to it. So I assume it's legal, right? We already would have figured out that it wasn't legal. As long as it's legal, I say it's fair game.
And we'll probably see more of it, as you said. So that is interesting to say. Well, let me switch gears and share this with us here. I've got an article from WSET in Roanoke. Virginia sheriffs push back on proposed gun restrictions, citing Second Amendment rights. So proposed gun control legislation moving through the Virginia General Assembly is drawing pushback from local sheriffs across Central and South Side Virginia, with several taking to social media to pledge to uphold the Constitution and defend Second Amendment rights. The measure under debate ranged from banning assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines to holding gun manufacturers and dealers accountable under quote unquote responsible conduct standards. So local law enforcement officials say the proposals threaten a way of life in rural Virginia, where firearms are commonly used for hunting, sport, and self-defense. So we've seen a lot of gun bills come through this session in the General Assembly, and they aim to essentially make it illegal to sell, illegal to pass down firearms, and if taken to its logical conclusion, after 20 years of not being able to hand firearms down, they sort of become like, well, we just don't have them anymore. There's just no longer, there's no longer a thing. And so now through my reporting and different people I've talked to, if you remember back in the fall of 2019, you had these jurisdictions declaring themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries, saying, well, we're going to uphold the Second Amendment. I believe Stafford County was one of those. Prince William County actually did that under Corey Stewart before he stepped off the board up there. Is that going to become a thing again?
Well, and I don't say this lightly because of the issue, because it's a Republican issue, but yeah, it should. And the reason here is just like last time, these laws will not stand up to United States Supreme Court, to constitutional challenges. So they are. I believe that many of them are just illegal on their face. And if the General Assembly is going to ignore that, then I don't have a problem with individual counties and cities taking these positions. And I don't necessarily like the resist type of mentality, but this is a big deal. The Second Amendment to the Constitution. You can't make it illegal for people to possess guns that just because they're an assault style weapon, and not be able to pass them down to their family members, or for that matter, be able to sell them. I think you're taking away something of value. I have a lot of money invested in my guns. They're going to make me a criminal and take away all my investment. So good for them. That's my response. Good for them, and I hope so. And I hope Stafford. I doubt it, but maybe with 2 law enforcement officers on the board, we can still do the same thing.
No, it's interesting. So Dave Ramsey is a financial guru guy, been around for years, and he always says, do not sell your guns, right? Once you have a firearm in your possession, you keep it in your family, you keep it in your safe, you keep it and pass it down through generations. And it looks like they're, and because of that mentality, it's becoming targeted by these bills that many of them, as you said, look to be headed straight for the Supreme Court if they were to pass. And so aren't they just, with this type of legislation, aren't they just driving more people to gun stores? Aren't they giving these firearms dealers essentially a great year, a great Christmas? Isn't that all they're doing with these?
Yeah, no, they are. That's all. And they're virtue signaling, and they're playing to their base. But what we know is these laws don't reduce crime. So it's not going to help the problem they're suggesting they're going to solve. So yes, but eventually, if you made it illegal to buy a magazine over a certain capacity, or an assault style weapon, which means nothing about the functionality of the gun, of course, it's the way it looks, you will eventually curtail that industry in Virginia. Or if you make it so we can sue the manufacturers, you can go after that. That also will hurt the industry as an industry.
And the language keeps changing, right? We hear now this year it's assault style weapons. It used to be long guns. Anybody who has fired a weapon before knows anything about it. A handgun is a pistol, and a long gun is a rifle, because of the way the barrel of the gun is rifled and the way it projects the bullet. it seems like even the language in these bills continue to change to kind of match whatever mood that particular lawmaker is in that year.
Yeah, they made some amateur mistakes in their legislation that have been pointed out by a couple of the delegates, like Ren Williams. 16 inches is the rifle barrel is 16 inches or longer, and then so you can have what looks like a rifle at 12 or 13 inches, but it's actually considered a pistol under law.
Interesting. Okay, well, we'll continue. We'll continue to watch that, and if you're watching, let us know, what do you think about these gun bills? Have you been following them? Do you have comments? Do you have guns? Are you worried about the effects that these bills may have on you and your family and your ability to gift, pass down what many consider to be family heirlooms? These guns, obviously for protection, for hunting, but they are. Once they're bought, they're generally kept within the family and passed down for generations. And though some of these legislation in these bills we're seeing were mandatory gun buybacks. I think one of the bills had something in there that says if you're a jurisdiction, you have to come up with a way to either buy back or give back guns. So maybe we'll see more of that as part of the discussion. I know Fredericksburg had one here this past year. Their city council held their first one. We've seen them in voluntary. Yeah, it's good point. Good point. Voluntary give back or buy back, if you will. But we'll continue to track that.
And do you, if you're going to have them answer those questions, do you think these will make you safer? And safer can be, will it cut down on mass murder events, and will it cut down on the overall crime, death and shooting rate? It certainly won't. The evidence is that it will have no effect on the second. It may make it harder for a crazy person to get a gun. But overall, what affects our crime rate and murder rate are other policies that Republicans really win on every time, just tough on crime policies. So.
All right. Well, we'll keep watching that. The last, next I want to get into, you're going to call me a curmudgeon. You're going to call me a cruel, a heartless guy. You're going to think that I don't like kids, that I don't understand their plight. But this story here, I'm going to share it right here. It is from this came out in VPAP's morning newsletter this morning. This is UR Capital News, reported from the University of Richmond. And the headline here: high school senior urges lawmakers to protect students from unpaid meal debt penalties. So a high school senior traded his classroom seat for a spot before state legislators Wednesday morning and urged members of the General Assembly State Education Committee to move forward with legislation aimed at protecting public school students from penalties tied to unpaid school debt. Barrett Kendig, a student at Mountain View High School in Stafford County, spoke in support of SB 42, which would require public school boards to shield students from punitive actions over unpaid meal balances. The bill would also require public school divisions to use non-federal funds to cover any uncollectible school meal debt remaining at the end of each school year. So call me crazy, but food costs, right? Meals costs, school lunch costs. And there are some parents, I'm one of them, who choose not to pay for school lunch. I wake up every morning, I pack a box lunch, I try to make it as nutritious as possible, and I put it in my kid's backpack, and they go off to school and they have packed lunch. They've come home several times. Hey, can I get school lunch? I want to try the pizza or this, that, and the other, and maybe someday we will. But for now, we do that. But things cost, and when you don't instill that fact that things cost money and free lunch, nothing's free. What are we teaching the kids here?
Yeah, you're right. Why do you hate kids? That's what I always used to hear. That was Court Sterling's line whenever you would say anything against school funding or whatever. But yeah, it's more dumb policy. The argument, just to get it out there, is that that school breakfast now and lunches are the only place that these kids will get a good meal or a meal. In other words, the supposition is that the parents aren't going to feed them. If you don't feed them in school, they're not getting fed. And that may be true in a small percentage of cases, but what we know about social welfare programs is as soon as you offer the free food or the possibly free food, you end up with a lot of people that they opt for they take the free instead of doing it themselves like you do, or paying for it out of their own pocket. So you create more dependency, and to try to help a few people. This is not the place. School is not the place. School budgets are not the place, in my opinion, to be administering this type of a social welfare program. If we have kids that can't afford, that parents aren't feeding them, we should deal with it a different way, because this has gotten out of control. In Stafford, it's the cost is become crazy in the school. And again, the affordability in Stafford is really not doing well, and the cost of living here, because of the government expense of the government taxation, is growing faster than anywhere I've seen. And I mean that. I'd challenge someone to tell me where overall taxes have gone up more in the last 4 years under Democrat leadership now than Stafford County.
And there's also the fact that it's become sort of a notch in your political belt to say, hey, we have X amount of kids on free and reduced lunch, and we're feeding them free lunch. And many politicians that we have seen run on this celebrate that fact, because they have a lot of essentially poor kids on free lunch, and that's something that they tout and they're proud of.
Yeah, of course, like a lot of other things bad policy we've gone through in this last conversation. But again, I'm not saying that some kids don't need help with this type of thing. I just don't think the school budget is the place for it. It should be administered somehow another way, where you're a little more careful about who you're offering taxpayer dollars to. That's just smart business.
I mean, do you think it should be, it's kind of like, and this kind of takes me back to when Obamacare was being put through and passed. It's like, have a pot of money for the people who don't have healthcare or don't have it or won't have it, who won't buy it, right? For whatever reason.
Yeah. Don't
want it, right? And put money aside for those people, but yet don't make everybody else upend what they're doing, their way of doing business, to fit the needs of everyone, right? Do you think there's a way to do that? I mean, if you were in the General Assembly, I mean, we see a lot of these bills go through, and then they're always, how can we buy lunch for everybody? How can we provide free lunch for everybody? Because I mean, that seems to be the goal. How would you do it if you were in there?
Well, of course, the answer is yes. Of course, there's a way. It's just like work requirements, right? That's a way for welfare programs. That's a way to limit the amount of exposure the taxpayer has. How I would do it, again, would be you would have to apply for and be approved to get free taxpayers' dollars. But this type of feel-good free stuff, that's signature Democrat stuff. That's what they do. That's what works for them. And if it's feel good, right? Oh my God, you don't want these kids to eat, Uriah? I mean, again, what do you have against children? Wow, you can afford to feed your kids. Maybe this person can't. That's a serious accusation that people will make, and it's on its face like that's something to really consider. But again, the cost matters. Who's paying for it? And then, of course, there's always a tipping point where you become a community where you can't afford it anymore. That happens all the time, all over the place. The federal government bails out whole states who have all of the time who just couldn't afford all of their free stuff anymore that they've been giving away. Always Democrat-controlled states.
Well, I'll wrap this one by saying there was one day where I sent my kid in with a packed lunch, and for whatever reason, she forgot it was in her bag, and she went and didn't have her lunch with her in the cafeteria. So they gave her a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and maybe a banana. It was just something, and it takes me back. I mean, we had that too, right? If you forgot your lunch, they would always give you, like, they would feed you, right? The school division, the schools they don't want any kids hungry, so they will feed you. But as soon as she came home, we got a call from the school saying, "Hey, you owe us $2.13 or whatever whatever the amount was." Right. And we paid it, right? Nothing's free. And so I don't know. So what do you think? Am I heartless? Am I cruel? Let me know. Tell me in the comments. Do you think that that the state should be paying for meals for every kid in every school across the Commonwealth? Or do you think parents should step up and be responsible for their children, either pay their bill, pay the lunch bill, or find an alternative way to feed them, pack a lunch, but buy, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend getting takeout every night and bagging up, but however it is you do it, or as Paul, is what you said, put away a fund, apply for that fund, give it to the people who really do need it, and make it available. Let me know in the comments. What do you think, and what's the solution to this issue? Because we have to question teaching children that there's something, such thing as a free lunch. Once they get in the real world, they're going to quickly learn that's not true. That's my lived experience, if you would, and everyone likes that term, lived experience. So there you go. Paul, as we wrap up here, tell me what's new with you. How have you been? You're transitioning. You're getting out of the Richmond world back into the daily world back here in Northern Virginia. I know you're still active, talking with your neighbors. You're still running your business. You're still obviously keeping up with what's happening in politics, both national and here in Virginia. What have you been up to this year?
Yeah, I've really just working, but this time I make money working. So I have a business that always could have used more of my time, and it's exciting businesses. So that's what I'm doing, spending actually even more time with my family. Traditionally, I would be in Richmond. This time right now, I'd be literally staying in Richmond. So I get to spend more time with my little girl, which is, how do you put a price on spending time with a 4-year-old? And then I've gotten myself into some business ventures that I'm pretty excited about. So it just gives me some time to think, do I want to ever get back into politics again? I haven't closed the door, but right now it's hard to even try to stay engaged on it because I'm happy worrying about other stuff.
That is good news. And it's also good news that you're still here in Virginia. You haven't left for Florida just yet.
Yeah.
So that's good news.
I'm not going anywhere.
Well, that's cool. Well, this has been great. Thank you for coming on and spending some time with me this afternoon. Thank everyone out there for listening and watching and commenting. We love to have your feedback. We certainly appreciate your support. And we will see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks.